Hello everyone and welcome back to the Commander Tribe Elder. Today we're going to take a look at one of the Commander precons from Commander Legends. This is the Aesi Tyrant of Gyre Straits. It costs 4 green and a blue for a 5/5 legendary serpent. You may play an additional land on each of your turns. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you may draw a card. So it's kind of what the whole deck is about. We're going to be playing a bunch of lands, drawing a bunch of cards, and there's a slight serpent, kraken, leviathan, octopus tribal theme built into it. I didn't expound too much on that, despite my namesake. Instead, I kind of tried to go more with the just doing what the commander wants to do. And if you notice, we have several piles here. This is the mana base. It's 44 cards deep. I removed 2 of them. This is just the rest of the deck. If you really want, I can go over that at another time, or just look it up on the internet. This is mostly about what I did to it. This pile here is kind of some cards that got some flack and got removed by other people. I kind of wanted to just shout out their case, you know. I think if you build it appropriately, some of these can actually be more useful than people think. And maybe they're just inherently better for a particular reason. Perfect example is this one, the Simic Skyswaller. It's 5 green blue for a 6/6 flying trample shroud. Now you may argue that this is just a big flying beater. On the other hand, it's a big flying beater, so I don't see what the problem was. Plus, it goes in with the Leviathan theme. So, this was one that caught some flack and was replaced by another creature. I don't remember the name of it right off the top of my head, but it was another octopus. And basically, you could pay 8 and tap down 8 permanents. That's fine. And I like that you can repeat that ability. But I think it's okay to leave this one in, because you can cast this for as little as 2. It has an emerge cost of 5 and 2 blue, which basically says that you may cast this spell by sacrificing a creature and paying the emerge cost reduced by that creature's converted mana cost. This can cost as little as 2 to bring in a 5/6 and tap down 4 target permanents. So it's a nice kind of gotcha out of nowhere card. Whereas with the other one, you have to wait for it to be... I don't know if it has to be Summon Signers or not. I'll have to look at that one. It might be in my Arixmethes deck. Rampaging Balos was basically touted as the weaker cousin to the Avenger of Zendikar. Yes, this does not give you as much immediate effect, but for 6 mana, it is a 6/6 trample that gets you 6/6 or 4/4 beasts every time you drop a land. And in a deck where we can drop 1, 2, 3 lands per turn, that's nothing to sneeze at. And I left Avenger of Zendikar in the deck, so you have to contend with both. Scourge of Fleets, Whelming Wave, and the ever so expensive Slinvoda, the Rising Deep, were all basically bashed on because they are board wipes, but they don't put your opponent's creatures into the graveyard. What I like about these is they're generally one-sided, or at least 3/4 one-sided. Yeah, it's going to remove some of your stuff, but this is one of the reasons we actually do this thing called build tribal decks. Because there's little niche cards like these in the game, and, you know, just because they're not going to the graveyards doesn't mean anything. I mean, yeah, your opponents can recast them, but you take out your highest priority threats first, and then you just play mop-up operations after that. The only one that I might think of actually removing would be the Slinvoda, because it is so expensive. It's 10 for doing the whole thing. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, yeah. But it does give you a Leviathan, so, you know. I found this odd that people were removing Simic Signet. Yeah, it's not a land, but it's still ramp on turn 2. I mean, it's not like it's Chromatic Lantern or something on 3, which I wouldn't put that in a 2-color deck anyway. But I think just being able to do any sort of ramp on turn 2 is wonderful. This one's neat because it gives green and blue creatures +1/+1 each. So like our Simic Sky Swallower, we get +2/+2 and be an 8/8 beater in the air. So that's pretty nice. But I think the reason that it really deserves a place in the deck is the third ability on the bottom. Untap all green and or blue creatures you control during each other player's untap step. So you can kind of, as long as you have some sort of being able to come out ahead on an attack into somebody, and then you get them all back as defenders on their untap step. So I'm not sure why people are removing this one either. I think this is definitely a shoe-in for the deck, even though it's not a Serpent, Leviathan, Kraken, or an Octopus. Anyway. So as for the ones that I did remove, like I said, there was 44 lands in this. I thought that was just a little too high. So I did remove Memorial to Genius. It enters the battlefield tapped. You can tap it for blue mana, and you can pay 4 and a blue, sacrifice it to draw 2 cards. So this basically has it all wrong. First, and yes, I did keep the mana base pretty much the same, so there's a lot of tap lands in it, but it does come into play tapped, and it only provides blue. Plus, it has the wretched ability of paying 5 mana for drawing 2 cards. I can do that by casting a Cultivate, or, you know, some other similarly lower casting costs anything to do that. So that's leaving, and in its place I am putting Misty Rainforest. It is a pain land. You tap it, pay 1 life, sacrifice it, search your library for a forest or an island. Put it into the battlefield, importantly, untapped. Unless it says come into play battlefield tapped. And that's also something, it doesn't say basic forest or island. So you can grab a dual land with this. Or shock land. I removed a basic forest just for the heck of it, because I thought 44 was too much, so I took 2 lands out. In the lands place, I put Arixmethes, the Slumbering Isle. It's 2, a blue, and a green for 12/12. It enters the battlefield tapped with 5 slumber counters on it. As long as it has a slumber counter on it, it's a land, not a creature. It does trigger landfall abilities, though. Whenever you cast a spell, you may remove a slumber counter from Arixmethes, and you can tap it to add blue and a green to your mana pool. I had no other spot for this card, so I just picked this card. Appeal from Reality. It's 1 and a blue. You return target creature you control and target creature you don't control to their owner's hands. This is doing this single blink thing, which is not something we want to do. Yes, you can argue in the same vein that I said, well, it's off the battlefield. That's true, but I don't know that there's too many reasons in here to actually be removing your own creatures, especially since a lot of them are really expensive. You kind of want your threats to stick around. And you just might get stuck with, like, several large creatures and then just have to recast the bloody thing. So in its place, I put a definite shoe-in that is doing things that we want to do and could almost replace the commander in this deck, and that's Tatyova, the Benthic Druid. She's 3, a blue and a green, for a 3/3 Merfolk Druid, which, interestingly enough, she will not get removed to Slyn Voda, but she will tell the Whelming Wave, and yeah. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you gain a life and draw a card. So this does basically what the commander does, except you don't have the extra land. So, definite shoe-in. This was interesting, and it kind of hurt me, because I like sharks a lot. But I took it out. It's Sharktail Crab. It's 2, a green, and a blue for 4/4, which isn't bad. And it has the octopus subtypes, or the subtype. So it wouldn't get removed to some of the things in here. It adapts for 2 and a green and a blue, which just means you put a +1/+1 counter on it if it didn't already have one. And then when it gets a +1/+1 counter on it, tap target creature an opponent controls. That creature doesn't untap during its next controller's untap step. I just found this to be so unimpactful. Like, it's strictly worse than bouncing a creature to their owner's hand. and it's not repeatable. It's almost like if it was cheaper and repeatable and I could just keep doing it over and over again, it'd be great. But it's for one turn. So I wanted something more impactful than that. And I think that Nylea, God of the Hunt, for 3 and a green for 6/6 indestructible. As long as your devotion to green is less than 5, Nylea isn't a creature, but other creatures you control have trample. Plus, if you pay 3 and a green, target creature gets +2/+2 until the end of the turn. So it gives all your big creatures trample. It allows you to pump your creatures up even further, even some of your lower level threats. You know, Tatiova could be really nasty for just, you know, an extra 8 mana if you have it lying around, which you just might have lying around. The next card I removed was Muldrifter. It's 4 and a blue. It's flying elemental for that's a 2/2. When it enters the battlefield, draw 2 cards. You can invoke it, which just means you sacrifice it after it hits the battlefield, but you still have to draw the 2 cards. This is one of the few cards that would actually benefit from being removed and then put back into the battlefield. But there was basically that one card. And finding that one card and this one card in the course of a game is just really low. Funny thing about this is that I was actually looking for the Corsair Crucifix, which is the 2/4 that allows you to play with your library revealed and then play lands off the top of your hand. But I couldn't find it, so I found my expensive Oracle of Moldiah, which is 3 and a green. That's a 2/2 that basically does all that. And you get to play a land on each of your, an extra land on each of your turns. So, yeah, this is not a budget reconstruction. Next card I removed is the Meteor Golem. It's 7 for a 3/3 Golem. When it enters the battlefield, destroy target non-land permanent and opponent controls. That's well enough. I just find it a little expensive for being such a low impact on the board afterwards. So why not help yourself get to your threats a little bit quicker on your next turn? So Plasma Capture for 2 green, 2 blue. It's an instant counter target spell. At the beginning of your next pre-combat main phase, add X mana of any combination of colors to your mana pool, where X is the spell's converted mana cost. I would love to counter a Meteor Golem with a Plasma Capture. Into the Royal. It's 1 and a blue. It has a kicker of 1 and a blue. Return target non-land permanent to its owner's hand. If this spell is kicked, draw a card. Again, this is just that single target. Goodbye. But then it comes back. And yes, like I said, the case could be made that, well, your board wipes do the same thing. Yeah, but I find that on a single basis, it's not that impactful. Or they'll just switch it up and, you know, bring something else nasty out. So, instead, just again, counter the thing. Swan Song. Counter target enchantment, instant, sorcery spell, or a sorcery spell. Its control puts a 2/2 bird, blah, 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 blah. Blue bird creature token with flying into the battlefield. We're going to be able to mostly outweigh our opponents on the battlefield, so countering an instant, sorcery, or an enchantment is more impactful than really getting a creature. And this is pretty much a format staple. The next one that I removed is Urban Evolution. It's 3, a blue, and a green. You draw 3 cards, you may play an additional land this turn. Even by drawing 3 cards, there's going to be times when you're not pulling a land from there. I mean, you will often enough, but is it worth it to pay 5 to draw 3 cards, which is what our deck is doing in the first place, and then playing an additional land? I don't think so. So I replaced it with my namesake, Sakura Tribe Elder. It's 1 and a green for a 1/1. Sacrifice it, search your library for a basic land card, put that card into your battlefield tapped, and then shuffle your library. Instead of hoping we get a land, I'm knowing we're getting a land. And that's what I like about this card. The next one I replaced, and this was kind of hard just because it is multifunctional. But it's Simic Charm, it's blue and a green, and then you get to choose either target creature gets +3/+3 till the end of the turn, which is kind of meh, at least on a one-shot basis. Permanents you control gain hexproof, which is nice, but I think that indestructible is better. Or you can return target creature to its owner's hand. Again, you're going to want to use that on your opponent, but I'd rather just kill the things. I did replace it with a single target staple of the format protection spell. You could almost put a heroic intervention here, and now that I'm kind of thinking about it, I'm not sure if I'm going to keep the lightning greaves or not, but in any case, for the now, I do have lightning greaves, which is 2 for an artifact equipment. Equipped creature has haste and shroud, and the equip cost is 0, so it's beautiful. It does have the counterpart Swiftfoot boots in the deck already, so I figured throw this in also, and this can protect one of our high priority targets like Tatiova or one of our big nasty creatures. Stormtide Leviathan. It's 5 blue, blue, blue for an 8/8 island walk. All lands are islands in addition to their other types. Creatures without flying or island walk can't attack. I was really confused why this even made it into the deck. There are 0 creatures in here with island walk. And there's only a couple that have flyers and only a couple that allow you to get flyers. Not nearly enough to kill people that have 40 life. So I was very confused on this. I put one of my favorite spells, since this was kind of an awkward one. I love, 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 love this card, and it actually held off a Edgar Markov deck just a little bit longer and allowed me to survive a couple more turns. I ended up losing the game, but it's still a fun, fun card. It's Reform. It's 3 and a blue for a 0/1. Well, shucks, that's not impactful or anything. But when Reform dies, you put a 3/3 blue fish creature token into the battlefield. That creature has, when this creature dies, put a 6/6 blue whale creature token into the battlefield. With, when this creature dies, put a 9/9 blue kraken creature token into the battlefield. This card is so much fun when people just kill the thing. It's like, you can put it up as a chump blocker and you get a 3/3, you know, and then people are like, kind of look at it like, oh, the one thing that you do have to be aware of is if somebody tucks it into your library, or if they exile it, because then it doesn't hit the graveyard, it doesn't die. There are ways of interrupting it, but it's just a lot of fun. Sure, you could replace this with something a little bit more impactful or better, but this was my pick, and this just holds a special little place for me. I love this card. Plus, if you get the tokens appropriately, I don't have them out, so that's a failure loss on me. It shows the fish eating the worm, and then the next token shows the whale eating the fish, and then the Leviathan eating the whale. It's a great set of tokens. I'll have to show them sometime. Maybe when I do my Rick Smithy deck, which I had to scrap half of just to pull out the cards for this one. Fathom Mage is the next card I removed. It's 2 a green and a blue for a 1/1. It has Evolve. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, if that creature has greater power or toughness, then that creature put a +1/+1 counter on it. Whenever you put a +1/+1 counter on Fathom Mage, you may draw a card. Yes, we're going to be putting out a lot of threats, but we're going to be putting out more lands, and that's our way of drawing cards. This just seemed like a little bit of a longbow, so I put an actual threat in. And that Storm Surge Kraken, excuse me. It's a 5/5 for 3 and a blue blue. It has hexproof. Plus it also has Lieutenant. As long as you control your commander, Storm Surge Kraken gets +2/+2 and has whenever Storm Surge Kraken becomes blocked, you may draw 2 cards. So if your commander is out, it's a 7/7 that's hard to remove. And if somebody chump blocks it, you're drawing 2 cards. It's beautiful on all ends. Either you're dealing 7 damage or you're drawing 2 cards. Next card I removed is Seer's Sundial. It's 4. It has Landfall. It's an artifact. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you may pay 2 if you draw a card. This is what our commander and several cards in here already do. So I decided to put a few cards in here that actually take advantage of you drawing cards. And the first one is Chasm Stalker. It's 2 and a blue for a 1/1. It's a squid horror, so it will get removed to some of your board wipes. But whenever you draw a card, put a +1/+1 counter on it. When it dies, put X blue 1/1 squid creature tokens with Island Walk into the battlefield, where X is the number of 1/1 counters on Chasm Skulker. So it does kind of, again, just like the reform, it hedges off people maybe wanting to wipe the board with a traditional board wipe. They're not going to just want to destroy it right off the bat, because then they have multiple targets to block. The next card I removed was Spore Mound. It's 3 green for a 3/3. It has landfall. When a land enters the battlefield under your control, create a 1/1 green sapperling creature. This is like the really horrible cousin to the Avenger of Zendikar, which I saw people take this out and upgrade it for a card that puts 2/2 creatures into the battlefield for a landfall effect. That costs exactly the same amount, and I'm like, that's okay, I guess. But again, I decided to take advantage of the card draw. I put in a Deer Kraken, which is 1 blue, so it does come out early. It's a 2/3 Kraken. Whenever you draw a card, you may pay 1. If you do, put a +1/+1 counter on a Deer Kraken and create a 1/1 blue tentacle creature token. So again, those tokens will be removed to some of our board wipes, but it is putting the same sort of threat analysis for way cheaper. This is 3 and can be cast as early as turn 2 or 3, whereas turn 5 over there is a little bit harder to do and a lot less impactful, and we're getting a lot less tokens. The next card I pulled out was Retreat to Xanadu. The K is silent. And I added an extra N. Anyway, it's 2 and a green. It has landfall. It's an enchantment. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, choose 1, put a 1/1 counter on target creature you control, or gain 2 life. I found this landfall ability to be... I mean, it's okay if you're just putting the 1/1 counters on, but we don't really reap anything else from it. We have a few cards that bump our creatures up a little bit. So I went ahead and took this one out, and I put in something that was a lot more fun and smoothed out our draws a little bit better, and that is Abundance. It's 2 and a green, or 2 and 2 green. It's an enchantment. If you would draw a card, you may instead choose land or non-land, and reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal a card of the chosen kind. Put that card into your hand, and put all other cards revealed this way on the bottom of your library in any order. Note, this does shut down some of your draw stuff, because it says if you would draw, you may instead choose, and then put that card into your hand. So this negates you drawing. Yes, it's the same action physically, but it's a different game term. This will shut off some of your effects, but I find that's not that bad, because a lot of the things we're going to be doing is like whenever a land enters the battlefield. And that's kind of the key that we're working towards. The next one I removed was Run Up Excavator. It's 2 and a green for a 2/3 Naga Cleric. You may play lands from your graveyard. I didn't find that with just Expansive Evolutionary Terrain and Tresmor Defying Expanse and a couple other cards that playing lands from your graveyard was a big deal in this deck. You could certainly change your mana base, put in a lot more pain lands, put in a lot more fetches, and definitely go that route to make him awesome. This deck didn't have that. I don't have those cards, so I took him out, and instead I put in a Lotus Cobra. It's 1 and a green for a 2/1 snake, and when it has landfall trigger. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. I found that to be a lot more useful than playing lands from my graveyard. Next card I removed is Harmonize. It's 2 green, draw 3 cards. I counter, and I'd rather do something where I play, it's a threat, and it basically draws me cards over time. So whenever another creature with power 3 or greater enters the battlefield under your control, then you may draw a card, and it's 4/4 Beast. I think it's a little bit better than that. It puts a threat on the board, and we're not just blowing 4 mana for 3 cards. Wicker Burrow Elder, it's 3 and a green for a 4/4. When it enters the battlefield, put a -1/-1 counter on it. Pay a green, remove a -1/-1 counter from it, destroy target artifact or enchantment. I just decided to go with a big 9/9 Leviathan. It's a little bit more expensive. When it's a Breaching Leviathan, it's 7 in blue, so 9 total. If you cast it from your hand, tap all non-blue creatures. Those creatures don't untap during their next controller's untap steps. Yes, tapping things down is not hugely impactful, but when you're doing a mass, it's great. The next card that I removed is Growth Spiral. It's green and a blue. Draw a card. You may put a land card from your hand onto the battlefield. Again, just drawing one card isn't going to necessarily net you a card in hand. Instead, I put in Kiora, Benthic Beckoner. It's 2 and either a blue or a green for a 7. I forgot the term. It comes in with loyalty counters. 7 loyalty counters it comes in with. Whenever a creature with power 4 or greater enters the battlefield under your control, draw a card. So it's already going to be more impactful than that. And you can minus 1 loyalty counter to untap target permanent. You do this up to 7 times. Not in the same turn, once each turn, but still. I did remove Nezahal Primal Tide. It's 5 blue for a 7/7. The spell can't be countered. You have no maximum hand size. Whenever an opponent casts a non-creature spell, draw a card. Discard 3 cards. Exile Nezahal. Return to the battlefield tapped under its owner's control step at the beginning next untap step. It's just a lot of words. It really doesn't do anything except it's just, I think it's too much for too little. So in its place, I did put Cyclonic Rift, which 1 in a blue, you could overload it for 6 in a blue. Return target non-land permanent you control to its owner's hand, or if you overload, then you return all non-land permanents that your opponents control to their owner's hands. Again, yeah, for the people that are hating on cards that don't destroy things, this is a staple in the format. Verdant Sun's Avatar, it's 5 green for a 5/5 dinosaur. You gain life equal to creatures' toughness as they enter the battlefield. I felt that was underwhelming. Yeah, you could gain a lot of life on it, but I'd rather my threats just cost cheaper, so I added Goreclaw, Terror of Calcisma. It's 3 and a green for a 4/3. Creature spells you cast with power 4 or greater cost 2 less. Whenever it attacks each creature you control with power 4 or greater, gets +1/+1 and gains trample to the end of the turn. Much more impactful than that. I took out the Sphinx of Thuum. It's a 5/6 flyer. Enters the battlefield, refill the top 5 cards of your library, and opponent separates those cards into 2 piles. I don't want to leave those decisions to my opponent. You pick one of the piles. I put in Brawn, which you really just wanted to go to the graveyard. It's 3 and a green for 3/3. It has trample. As long as it's in the graveyard, creatures and you control forest, creatures you control have trample. Next card I took out was Stump Squall Hydra. It's X 3 green for 1/1 Hydra. When it enters the battlefield, distribute X 1/1 counters among it and any number of commanders. Instead, I put in Sherix, the Raging Isle. It's 2 blue for 0/17. Leviathan Crab. Spells your opponent's cost that target it costs 2 more to cast. You could pay 3, it gets +X, -X until the end of the turn, where X is the number of islands you control. Just much more impactful than even your commander at that point. This is just a strictly better card. Millimel Morrow Sorcerer is really expensive and has trample and has power and toughness equal to the number of lands you control. This one does all that for 1 green less. And it has reach, and you return 2 islands you control to their owner's hand, and you return this from the graveyard to your hand. So it actually puts lands in your hand so you can use them again. Next card I pulled out was Explore. It's 1 and a green. You may play an additional land this turn. Draw a card. Again, you just don't know if you're going to have that extra land in your hand. Instead, I grabbed Parcel Beast. It's 2, a blue, and a green for a 2/4. It has Mutate, which I don't usually use, and I'm not going to explain here. You can pay 1 and tap. Look at the top card of your library. If it's a land card, you may put it into the battlefield. If you don't put the card into the battlefield, put it into your hand. So you're either putting a land into the battlefield, or you're basically drawing a card. It's not draw a card again, it's putting it into your hand, so it does negate those triggers. But still, it's so much more impactful than, hey, I might be able to use that. Because This is dead in your hand, and cards like this are dead in your hand if you don't have an island in your hand, or an island, any land. So, yeah, I took most of these you may play additional land this turn cards that are just one-shots for more permanent solutions. But yeah, that's my upgrade for this deck. Like, it's not budget, I think I removed like 23, 24 cards. You know, it's not a 10 in, 10 out kind of thing, but this is what I plan on taking when I bring Aesi to my LGS and playing it and swapping spells with people. I do have the other precon. I don't know if I'm going to do this soon. I may not. This is a Voltron deck, which means you're going after your opponents with one creature, basically, and this is not a strategy I use. So I plan on tuning the deck. I don't know if it's going to be any good because I might take it in directions that are not the norm. But hey, maybe that's why you're here. I don't know. I may or may not do this. I have another deck that I want to do, possibly. So we'll see how it goes. So until next time, we will see you then.